Why don't we start with the big ticket item, which is that fresh off of trading for one of the two or three best 3-and-D plus players in the league, in Mikal Bridges, the Knicks secured the services for the next 5 years, or 4 years, I should say, because he's got a player option, of another one of the best 2 or 3 such players in the league, in signing OG Anunoby to a 5-year contract for $215 million. That contract includes a player option on the final year, and there's a trade kicker, right? Yeah, it's a trade kicker. The 5-year max they could have given him was 5 for 230 something. 30, I forget what exactly it was. It was in the 230s. So, they save big air quote energy here. Save about $20 million on that, what that max number would have been. And, is that important? Sure. You get wins where you can. I imagine that was the cost of the player option. And really, I don't think they are all too concerned about what OG Anunoby is making 5 years or even 4 years or 3 years from now. The player option was probably their way to get the salary number down to we're talking a few $1 million, but as is going to become a theme tonight, a few $1 million is going to go a long way in Knicks world, perhaps over the next couple days and weeks. Got that number down a little bit lower for his salary in the immediate future in 2024-25 season. Before we get into any nitty gritty, and I'm going to turn it over to you for most of that, I'll just say, I've been unequivocal, as have you. There was no universe where they could lose OG Anunoby. I never for one solitary second wanted to, for shits and giggles, see how things turned out if we just, hey, you know what? Let's go to June 30th at 6 p.m. and see what happens. No, never had any interest in doing any such thing. I'm very happy they got this done today. I'm sure they're very happy they got this done today. I'm sure OG Anunoby's very happy they got this done today. This was not a thing that you could mess around with. And they did what they needed to do to get it done. And I, read the tea leaves, and this is probably what they needed to do to get this done. So, yeah.
They had to keep him. And I understand the concept of having the Knicks by the balls, because it's, in a lot of ways, what they did. That was the leverage. The Knicks opted for his talents, and in exchange, OG held leverage over them. And he got a nice chunk of change out of it, which is really important. It's very clear what the impact of winning is. If you're a Knicks fan who has been watching the Knicks at all last season, OG Anunoby, a huge factor in terms of what they do. Incredible winning percentage. I think with him and Brunson on the court, it's like on the Knicks court, it's 92% of games, something along those lines, that they've won together. So they're a dynamic duo in the Knicks.
Like plus 20 something.
Yeah. They've only gotten better through the addition of Mikal Bridges. So I really wasn't concerned about the exact number. I think another factor here is I expect that with the new TV deal, the salary cap will increase, and it will not be this giant skyrocketing raise like we saw in 2016, but it will be enough breathing room where in a few years we feel pretty good about where he's at with his contract. And if you're queasy about it now, I get it, but it just feels like every time someone signs a new contract, unless it's a steal of a deal, it's going to feel like, oh, damn, that's a lot. And in reality, it's you got to look at the percentage of the cap and as it goes up. These are all dominoes, puzzle pieces, whatever you want to compare them to. Being able to lock in one thing after another gives us a clear picture of how the Knicks plan to operate. And that's important because there are other pieces and other moves that are clearly in need of presenting themselves. And so understanding that we can put the OG factor behind us, that we don't have to worry about on June 30th, hey, we're pretty sure, like 99% sure that he's staying, but what if he doesn't? Don't have to worry about that anymore. And that's a really reassuring thing. So thrilled they were able to get it done. Love the fact that he's here. I still can't believe that he's a Knick. Again, he's kind of been my white whale for a while. So the fact that he's a Knick for the next 4 years That's awesome, man. Love it.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to be very clear, like I'm not going to sit here and try to. Neither of us are going to try to sit here and blow smoke up anybody's ass that like the money doesn't matter. Of course, the money matters. It's why when Jalen Brunson hopefully extends in a few weeks on a more team friendly deal, like that's going to matter a lot. Like the dollars add up, and the further that you could stay below the second apron in future years, like that all matters. At the same time, I think there are different levels of concern to contracts. And if the 10 out of 10, like DEFCON 1 level of concern is, oh, wait a minute, we're paying Bradley Beal how much in his fifth year at the age of what? Or, I'm trying to think of another good recent, well, Zach LaVine's not looking too great either. But like contracts of that nature where you're paying older players who may be injury prone. OJ Anunoby's 26 years old. He's going to be 30 in the last year of this contract. Again, we've kind of gone back to this theme a few times. Like the Knicks seem to have made their bed with this series of moves. Like this is their team. This is the team they envision, or at least there's a core to this team that I think they envision going forward with. So from that perspective, like again, not trying to say the money doesn't matter, but like I would be mildly surprised if we're sitting here in 3 years and be like, man, did the Knicks wish they could get out from under this one? But like, hey, listen, and crazier things have happened. But I'm not like going nuts about the money, I guess is the way I'm saying it.
Well, so you're not wrong, right? We're not saying that the money doesn't matter. But let me pose this to you. Does it? What is that money? If the Knicks are able to do everything that we're hopeful they'll do, and we'll get more into that, of course.
Yeah.
And it doesn't hinder them in any way, what exactly is the difference between OG getting 36 and 33 if they were going to be in pretty much the same position that they would have been either way?
I'm purely talking about, again, we don't know what's going to happen 2 years from now or 3 years from now, but like the like we don't know. Maybe it's a couple $1 million difference between this where they're at the second apron or not, like stuff like that. That's all.
Less is better. Don't get me wrong, but in terms like, okay, are you, and this is not directed at you, this is for those who might be a little bit skeptical of the price. Do you expect the Knicks to be a cap space team? The answer is a resounding
of course not.
No. It really comes down to margins. Like, can you do something with margins and other moves? And like, that's what we're talking about, but there are ways around that. Another example is that the Timberwolves just tonight, they are above the second apron. They can't really use anything that would help them bring in new talent, because that would hard cap them most likely, and they can't be hard capped. So what did they do? They traded the only future draft equity that they really had that was of value for Rob Dillingham, because there's nothing against the CBA that says you can't bring in your own draft picks, even if you're in the second apron. So they found a loophole, which is, listen, we can bring an impact player in now, and it won't hard cap us in any way because we're spending so much money that this is how we add talent to our team. The sacrifice we're making is talent 7 years from now, right? Like there's a 13-year-old right now who's probably having the best spring break of his life. He has no idea that pick was traded by Minnesota for Dillingham, and that's fine. But in terms of like how they operate, there needs to be some level of kind of backdooring this. And this CBA is the last one on steroids. I've been thinking about this, whereas like before it was fun and it was creative. And now I feel like a lawyer and I hate it. Right? Like, but then you get past the grind of it and you get into the fun parts and it's fun again, but there's still so many challenges. Like, it's hard, and I say this as someone who is a fan and who loves this stuff, and I know you appreciate it too, but I also look at the other fans who usually are not, they don't want to get into capology, they don't care about it, but it impacts their lives. And I honestly feel for them because the NBA has created, as my mini tangent, the NBA has created a world where it's really hard for fans to just fan. There are so many rules and regulations now that it forces fans who don't want to do the hard work. And I don't blame them. It's confusing as hell and it can be really boring. People don't want to necessarily do math They just want to watch ball and understand what it is. So from that perspective, I totally get it. And it can be incredibly frustrating. So I wish the NBA didn't go to that length, but they did. And now it's something that we have to do. And it's creating so much just confusion. And it's tough to keep up.
That's like a perfect transition to the draft. But before we move on to it, I'm like, I don't really know what else there is to say about OG Anunoby. I mean, to me, this is just like the Knicks read the marketplace, and it was becoming pretty obvious. Like, I don't know if anybody reported it outright, but a lot of people sure danced right around it and were like, came right up to the edge of it. Like, he was getting a 4-year max. So if a guy's getting a 4-year max somewhere else, then you got to, like, so then it really just comes down to what is the most, if you know you have to beat that, what is the most advantageous way for you to beat that? And again, I don't want to repeat myself. It's like you give a player option to knock a couple bucks off next year. Like, that's the sort of thing that you do. I don't really know what else to say. I mean, like, we've mentioned the idea of like maybe injury protections or this or that. Like, clearly they didn't have the luxury to put that stuff in. If they had the luxury to put that stuff in, guess what? They probably would have put that stuff in, but they obviously felt that they didn't. Anything else from you on the OG thing?
We don't have final numbers yet that might trickle in, but even still, if you're thinking, so the way that the contract is structured, right? Year one is presumably $36,637,932.
You said 36 and change?
36.6 and change.
Okay.
So the thing is, if you're looking at this number, the cap hit might change based on any unlikely bonuses if that comes up. But when it comes to counting towards the apron, because you have to allow for unlikely bonuses, that doesn't change. So maybe the cap hit gets smaller, like Julius Randle, right? Julius is earning $28.9 million this year, but he has an unlikely bonus of almost $1.4 million. So the Knicks, in their calculations, need to allow for that breathing room just in case it hits. Because if they're going to be hard capped, which we know they will be in some capacity, they need breathing room there. So with OG, like, that's the final number. It's going to be 36.6 no matter what, assuming 8% raises and it ascends. The real question is just from the cap hit perspective. Will the unlikely bonuses reduce that? But it doesn't mean, wow, the Knicks have more spending that they can do. It's purely just OG's contract. So for John, what you were saying, for those who might be thinking like overpay or maybe they gave too much, like that would be the way that the Knicks protect themselves from any sort of injury concerns. But that hasn't trickled out yet, and maybe it does. If it doesn't, then that's the number flat. There's nothing like if we're saying that he had the Knicks by the balls and I'm OG Anunoby, I want all my money to be guaranteed.
And the only other thing that I will say is it sounds like an astronomical amount of money, and it is a lot of money. OG Anunoby, I just double checked right now, is going to be, in all likelihood, the 30th highest paid player in the league next season, or whereabouts. Is OG Anunoby a top 30 player? Probably not. Is he a top 30? I hate referring to players as assets, but like, if you're, he's in the conversation, right? Like, in terms of if you're trying to, like, we always go back to this. If you're trying to win a championship, how many guys out there, like, you, assuming you have your number one, right? And the Knicks have their number one, it's Jalen Brunson. Okay, well, if you have your number one, how many other guys are out there would you rather build out your roster with than this dude? And it's an extraordinarily short list. So, it's not as much, lunacy as, again, it might seem at first glance.
I'll leave it at this, right? What's what's worse than OG Anunoby at 5 years, $212.5 million?
Let me take a guess. What?
Go for it.
Not having OG Anunoby.
Yeah, not having OG Anunoby. And you know what's even worse than that? Him going
it's to your
90 mile, not even 90 miles. Well, actually, probably a little bit more. He's going right 90 minutes at least on the train to Philadelphia. That'd be even worse.
I mean, again, we're not going to repeat ourselves. They made their bed on December 30th of last year. That was the day that they signed this contract that day for all intents and purposes.